I am live. I'm reading The Laird and the Lady. It is a novel by Joan Marshall Grant. She was generally a writer of her own farm memories. She wrote 7 books about her life in Egypt as Sekita in Winged Pharaoh and her life as Ra'ab. She played in Italy in 1504. She was born in Perugia. So she has had amazing lives, but this one is a novel about a ghost and the past, romance, love, lies. We're in the 3rd part here, and I interrupted the chapter entitled The Rocking Horse, and I think it is chapter 6 of the 3rd part, and I continue The Rocking Horse. To the rest, the salted bread was only a symbol of prosperity, but Marylda found it of extraordinary potency. She had intended to wait until the dancing was in full swing before slipping away, but a sense of urgency became so strong that she knew that to delay would only produce the thing she most wished to avoid. A shift into Emilie, so complete that she would be powerless to conceal it. Even as she walked through the drawing room, she knew the dull personality was not under full control. Her dual personality was not under control. It was some screen, yet which could be seen simultaneously without confusion. Marylda's room, green walls, the lustres of chandeliers reflecting the flame of candles, and Emilie's watercolours in gilt frames, peacock feather fans, a blare of harsh light from clustering gas globes. And was it Marylda's heart that thudded with the fear of a sane and deliberate effort to free a ghost, or Emilie's that quickened in anticipation of an assassination? It was Marylda who had put matches and a candle in Alice's room at the top of the East Tower stairs, so that no one could be made inquisitive by a light switched on in the uninhabited corridor. But Emilie had had the same foresight, and it was Emilie who opened the door of the old nursery. She went to the window and looked down on the terrace. The marble steps that had been brought from Italy only 3 months ago gleamed in the moonlight. How tiresome Hector had been about the new gates. Everyone else admired them. But Hector was nearly always tiresome now, and she resented the attraction she still felt when he exerted himself to please her. Perhaps, if she made him really jealous of Roderick, he would beg her to let him share her room again. It was ridiculous of him to have sulked in his dressing room since they quarrelled when he shot the roe deer. She heard footsteps coming along the corridor and leaned her head against the window frame so that Roderick should have the opportunity of admiring her profile. It would be a mistake to let him know she was impatient. She heard the door open and the candle she had put on the floor beside the rocking horse flickered in the sudden draught. "Pensive, my dear Emilie," said her husband's voice. Her swift movement of dismay betrayed her. "It was hot in the ballroom. I came here to get cool." She spoke too fast, unable to think of an adequate excuse for being found in a room she had deliberately avoided ever since Hector had suggested it was time she produced an heir. "What a remarkable coincidence that Roderick guessed your intention. I met him on the stairs and suggested he should be better employed entertaining my guests than amusing my wife. He was not too drunk to take the hint." "Jealous, dear?" "Only of my rights. As, unfortunately, you happen to be my wife, I must remind you that I expect a certain standard of decency." "Then I suggest you make it less obvious that you dote on Georgina. The child is sufficiently ridiculous without you making her blush whenever you look at her." "I am jealous of Georgina," she thought with a spurt of anger. "How dare Hector make a fool of me? How dare Roderick retreat like a guilty schoolboy?" "So that flicked you on the raw," she said. "You can tell your little cousin that I find her presence excessively boring. She can keep away from Cloud in future." He made a gesture of distaste. "I suggest you learn your place. It is my business who is asked to this house, and yours to be a courteous hostess. It is within your capacity to acquire courtesy. So far as I know, it's not a purchasable commodity. She dropped him a mocking curtsy. How lucky for you, otherwise your family would not be able to afford it. I'm not discussing my family, only my wife. And as I find the company of my husband, who is an ill-mannered bore, distasteful, I shall go to my room and leave him to make excuses to my guests, for they are my guests, whose money paid for them. Yours, God help me. She was too angry to be warned by the cold steel of his voice. Hector, please move away from the door. I don't expect you to have the civility to open it for me. He caught hold of her arm. I don't know when that stopped. As I find the company of my husband, who is an ill-mannered bore, distasteful, I shall go to my room and leave him to make excuses to my guests, for they are my guests, whose money paid for them. Yours, God help me. She was too angry to be warned by the cold steel of his voice. Hector, please move away from the door. I don't expect you to have the civility to open it for me. He caught hold of her arm. Emilie, what takes place in private is our own affair, but you will not disgrace me in public. You will come downstairs and behave properly. She pulled herself free and faced him. I shall not only go to my room, I shall let it be known that I will not again appear until Georgina has left the house. If you say a word to anyone about your filthy suspicions, I shall give you the thrashing you deserve. She laughed. A thrashing? Really, Hector, try not to be so melodramatic. Beggars can hardly afford to beat the wives who hold the purse strings. A rich whore is still a whore. Hector, you forget yourself. My God, if only I could forget, even when I'm drunk, that I'm married to you. The leash of her temper snapped, and she poured out a flood of words in which long months of boredom and resentment jostled for precedence. He shouted at her, "Be quiet, you fool, be quiet, or my God, I'll thresh you like the bitch you are." She taunted him. Yes, poor miserable coward, who boasts of his illustrious family and hasn't even the courage to lay a finger on his wife. Hit me if you dare, and I'll show everyone my bruises. I believe you would, he said, fighting for self-control. I really believe you would. Is there no tradition of decency in the kennel that bred you? She slapped him hard across the mouth. One of her rings cut his lip. He took the fine linen handkerchief from his sleeve and wiped away a trickle of blood. Again she hit him. Her fingers curved and felt his cheek tear under her nails. The veneer of civilization, fragile as the skin on a half-healed burn, flayed from the primitive male. She saw his fist driving towards her face. There was a sharp sound like a stick snapping underfoot. The rocking horse, against whose iron stand the back of Emilie's head had struck, began to move slowly backwards and forwards, as though ridden by the child which now would not be born to this Cloud woman. Chapter 7. Lament for a Lady.